Well, shall we start as we always do with silent meditation, brief one. Oh. So welcome to Satsang. Extra special guest Shiloh. Hi, Shiloh. Okay. So, who will start us off?
Hi, Nataraj.
Hello.
Love you.
So happy to see you.
Yeah, it's so good to see you. I was wondering if you would repeat and or sing Door of My Heart.
Oh. I would sing it, of course, but I'm on my iPhone and I don't know if it works. Usually there's a feature on the laptops that you can, I don't know, there's a button you can push to hit music. And I'm not sure I can remember it without singing it. What a quandary. Well, let's see. You can give me a thumbs up if it's working. And you can just nod your head. No thumbs down are allowed if it's cutting out. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Won't you come, won't thou come, just this once come to me. Won't thou come, just this once come to me. Will my days fly away without seeing you, my Lord? Will my days fly away without seeing you, my Lord? Is there one more verse? What is it? Well, did it cut out? No. So,
It was perfect. Thank you.
Zoom miracle. Not sure I've ever sung a cappella before to a Zoom room. Yogananda has so many beautiful chants. There's also Who Is in My Temple, which I'm not singing for you now. But you know, there is a place, a locale that is the heart, and it has a door. When you find it, open it. See what resides. Has everybody done it, a body scan? You know, you start on your toes and your feet, your ankles, your shins, your knees. It's part of the Shivananda sequence and part of so many. In final relaxation, Shavasana, we can, through a lot of really fun practice, bring our full attention into certain body parts. Left big toe, right earlobe, tip of your nose, the heart, cave in the heart, the well and the cave in the heart, where infinity resides. Well, in a way of speaking, of course, infinity isn't excluded anywhere. It can be so much fun actually exploring. Swami Satchidananda did a talk on Anam Pindam in Tamil, microcosm, macrocosm. And that the infinity resides inside of us and we reside inside of the infinity. Also known as Purusha Prakriti. The kingdom of heaven is within you. This seems like a poetry for so much of our journey, but it isn't really. as poetry. It's beautiful, isn't it? But the poetry is instructional, a little more elegant than an IKEA manual. But when you come to find this door, open it. And the way Yogananda chants this is with such pleading, such longing. He himself, it is said to be, and I believe it to be so, a fully realized being, an avatar. How could that one sing so with such yearning to the divinity that resides within him? In the Vaishnava tradition, they call this the nectar of separation. Coming into contact with the divine, the separation, the feeling of wanting increases exponentially as an ecstasy and a bliss. In a place where the desire, the seed of all desire, is ever expanding and ever satisfied. It is said, my cup overfloweth, ever expanding. Um, I think it's nice to know, or to know that potentially this exists as a human experience, an ever expanding bliss. But also maybe it agitates a little bit to hear it, not yet tasting it. But agitation is fine, but take it to be good news, because one would ask, without that, if this is all that it is, for the one who comes to satsang, seeing something even just a little bit lacking in the world, to find out potentially maybe this isn't all it is. This should be very good news. That what is the common human experience is only the tip of the iceberg of what it is to be human. If you hear from there, where this is good news, some hope, then you can get to the business of how to get from here to there. Really, it's about how to get from there to here. And it's a return. A return from the dream of so many identities and so many selves to the self that's untainted by experience, untainted by past, independent of memory, where you are fully, infinitely as isness and untroubled. Maybe this is the most important aspect of it, is being untroubled, unmolested by life. And so if this is a reasonable possibility, then let there be some hope in that. But there's so much more to this humanness, this world, this I sense, more than I've experienced. Some hope in that. And then what to do, how to bridge that gap. And so this is why sadhana, this is why spiritual practice, asana, pranayama, meditation, contemplation, devotion, all of these things healthy and good, and to begin to, as we begin to remove our attention from the habit of the objects of desire that are of the world to the source of the fulfillment of desire, which is inside of you. Where we, as Swami Shivananda says, detach, attach. Detaching from the habits of objective desires to coming to find the subjective desire. It's not exactly right the way I just said it, but I think it's good enough. And Swami Satchidananda says, I give you all of these practices, I give you all of these sadhanas simply to exhaust you, to bring you to the point where you fully surrender into stillness. In that desperate longing plea, will my days fly away without seeing you, my Lord? This desperation is the trailhead of spiritual life. It's base camp. And the way we could say that surrender, the way that we can understand it is resigning from one's own mental construct, opinions and beliefs. Resigning from the allegiance to what you call my mind. Surrender means an emptying, raw emptying of the contents of the heart. Usually with so many tears. And we lay all of these things at the doorstep of the heart. Lay all of these things there in surrender. It is a puja, an offering to our innermost being. This is Satguru, the indwelling divinity. And when we come to begin to become prepared to know the inner Satguru, oftentimes outer Guru will appear. When you're ready, when we're ready, outer Guru will appear. It means we're coming close to ourselves. And this one can come in form. For me, like Muji Baba, and unmanifest, like Swami Satchidananda, and so many others, to help ferry us home. From the ocean of samsara, where we're adrift, to the ocean of bliss, where we are, like this. So, Shwari, this is what comes to mind when I think of Door of my heart. Such a beautiful invitation into the nectar of separation. And I love this, I'll say again, I absolutely love the vision of Paramahansa Yogananda, the great human that he was, the great spirit that he was, is, singing with such longing. This is Bhakti, and this is Jnana. This is knowing, and this is bliss. So this is what awaits each one. No one is excluded from this. The yogis say it will take some practices over some lifetimes. So each one will get there. This is an absolute certainty. No one will ever be excluded. And it simply is a matter of time. Of course, for the one who experiences time. So I think we can also take this to be good news. Anything that we can cling to, called hope, that will help us to stop being so ashamed, to stop being so critical of ourselves. To just maybe just a little bit of a light, that we don't have to believe the thoughts that pummel us. I think you will enjoy it if you incorporate this into your practice of sitting and looking. Find the heart. Find the tip of your nose. Find the place where the breath enters the body. Be in the place where the breath takes its turn, the back of your throat. Be in the place where the breath enters the heart. we spend our whole lives exploring, trying to understand the outside world. Our eyes lead us. Now, maybe it's now, or it's started for many of us before now, of course. We close our eyes and we turn the inner eye inward. Turn it to the mind and the heart. Okay. So, who has something? I can't see everybody because I'm on my little phone. I may not see you if you raise your hand. You can just speak.
Nataraj, have been, I have a question or something I've been contemplating that's been pointed out to me twice in the last 3 or 4 days. The idea of sentimentality and compassion and how they differ and how just the idea of this and anything you could say about that.
Sentimentality and compassion. For each word, like sentimentality and compassion, there are so many octaves of experience. And anything that I can say anyway comes from the connotation. And so anything that I can say about this is relative and subjective and offered as an inquiry for you, but certainly not as a teaching. I think it's not really possible. All words are slippery like this, and it's very rare that what's inferred is what is implied. So maybe I'll share some thoughts and you can look at your own experience. Sentimentality is not bad. But let's look and see, there's something that's a bit of an act in it, a bit of a put on, where emotions are worn. We sort of cloak ourselves in them, oftentimes for some sort of social acceptance. That emotions are used in sentimentality as a way of getting along. That and it's a way of being accepted, or a way of expressing emotion as a generosity. Even connotations of compassion can be somehow entangled in another's story, their trauma, their suffering. Most of you, I'm sure, know that the Latin root of passion means to suffer, and that compassion means to suffer with. This compassion as either a recognition that we are indeed suffering together, me with you and you with me, us as a collective, we call we, a collective consciousness, a collective mind, a collective heart, a coherence of shared suffering, as a recognition that this is how it is. Also, this can be used to sort of enjoy a kind of an enjoyment of a relishing of suffering. This is very difficult to see. Has anyone seen it, this enjoyment of suffering? This loyalty to unhappiness? You see, because what is familiar for most, what is familiar is unhappiness. And so loyal to what we're familiar with, and so afraid of what we're not familiar with. This is an affinity, truly. Attachment to past, attachment to what is familiar. This is an affinity for our own suffering. And change is difficult. So look around you, see how people interact, and look at, what might be sentimentality. A tilt of the head, oh, just some sad news. What might be a movement of compassion to gain some intimacy by inviting people into our suffering so that they suffer with us, or wanting to delve into somebody else's suffering in an urgency to help. None of this is bad, but see it, just see it. Pay very close attention to it. You'll see it in others if you're paying attention, and seeing it in others, you'll be able to find it in yourself. But let's talk about compassion as a high wisdom. And I was talking to Mirabai this morning about this, that a beautiful, untarnished expression of compassion is when we are simply the vehicle. The faucet for the water, or the hollow reed for the flute. That there isn't, we don't put our sticky fingers on somebody else's suffering or even our own. And we simply sit still and allow what is compassion to be of its own accord, without directing it, without curating it even, certainly without manipulating. You see, when we sit in neutrality, which, by the way, to us, when we're still largely identified in sentimentality, what is true compassion at first might seem a bit calloused. It isn't. This neutrality allows the fullness of what is compassion to be present. And we could say, I am not the compassionate one. Compassion is, and I sit here with it. It sits in me and through me, but I am the insentient channel and also the beneficiary. This is neutrality. This neutrality, like I say, may at first seem like some kind of aloof or some kind of callousness. But you will come to know this neutrality if you dare to sit with it as equanimity. That this stillness is love. This stillness is a love that isn't transactional. This neutrality isn't looking to gain anything through expression of compassion, or it isn't looking to avoid anything in one's own self by the expression of compassion. In the stillness, compassion is, the healing happens within and around the one who sits in that, has invited it in and sits with it. does nothing, says nothing. This is a very high, uncommon, I think, compassion. What would it be like for you if you had this experience? This compassion we could also call the presence. What would it be like for you if you were, let's say, the conduit, neutral, and you were aware that isness pervades, compassion is, healing is happening, and nobody knows no credit to take. Nothing to claim. You could be standing in line at a Starbucks. Or sitting in a pew at church or in Satsang right now. So there is this sense, look for it, there's nothing wrong with it. You'll find it, it's in us. This sense of doership, the one that wants to claim compassion as the compassionate one, and is therefore very subtly transacting. It's not a problem. This already is a wonderful place to be. So, this neutrality, free of sentimental, cultural, behavioral plays, kabuki of emotion, which is good. It greases social and civil interactions. It's good. But see it. Free of this kind of sentimental play, of using emotion as a strategy, free of these strategies, coming through a perceived period of aloofness that really is neutrality, coming to the direct experience of the neutrality, which is stillness, where compassion is. This is you see, this is. You are, we are. And this compassion is actually dispassion, not suffering. Can you see? The yogis call it Vairagya, uncolored. It's often translated as dispassionate, and it is dispassionate, meaning not suffering, and isn't engaged in the play. And it isn't not engaged in the play. Also important to know this. So this Vairagya, this dispassion, uncolored, untainted, uncolored by the me that plays host to it, the you that plays host to it. It is really a joy to experiment in, And watch and see what happens within you and see what happens around you when you make yourself available as a vehicle for this isness that is compassion and healing and forgiveness. See what happens around you. See what problems there are left for you to solve. This stillness is untouched by any movement. This silence is not disturbed by my tongue. Each of us has had it, haven't we? The experience of speaking out of silence, from silence, where the sound doesn't disturb the silence. The silence is actually the necessary ground on which the sound appears. And it's the same thing with stillness and movement. There was a time, Ranjani Ma, you were practicing thresholds, finding the stillness at every threshold. Every doorway you pass through physically, finding the stillness and then moving again from there. So powerful, isn't it? Imagine that in every second, there is this portal, this threshold that is silence and stillness, that all silence, that all sound and all movement arises out of. This is called the ground of being. And through this practice and this willingness to be still and allow isness to be in you and around you, you now also are the ground of being, on which your personality, your mental habits and your psychological habits, your body itself dances on top of this. Your life moves on top of the stillness that also you are. It doesn't preclude movement. And the practice of stillness can help us find it because it's here right now. And it was here while you slept last night. And it was here when you were engaged in some conflict yesterday. This, as they say, is immutable. It has never not been. And so all that is for you to come to recognition that this is the ground of being, of isness, of I-ness. And everything that you have called me is sort of a flourishing, maybe we could say, on top of it. Finding that ground, life becomes a play. Not knowing this ground, knowing only past and person, life is a toil. Ugly, brutish, and short. I've always loved that quote. From ugly, brutish, and short to everlasting bliss. Independent of body and mind, emotion, personality, and nothing wrong with any of those things. Nothing to be excluded, nothing to be rejected. No problem. So the practice is, I imagine, something like finding the stillness. It's really so simple. If you if you are moving along with something, it's much more difficult to see that it is also moving. How do I say? Well, I like to use this for an exploration of free will, but I'll use it differently. Two fish swimming in the ocean. They're both swimming 5 miles an hour. If there's no sense of the bottom of the sea or anything in the sea, the fish wouldn't necessarily know that they're not just standing still. But if one goes a little faster or one goes a little slower, the relative sense of stillness, we can see the movement. So the goal is to become relatively still. For us, this means allowing the mind to quiet just a little bit. If the mind quiets just a little bit, you can see the movement of mind. And we have the benefit of the world around us. If your mind quiets a little bit, you'll definitely see the movement of minds around you. So the practice is coming to, little by little, a relative stillness. So the compassion that arises out of this is very potent. And each one of us can be that one. Mooji told this story one time. He was in Rishikesh at a cafe. And he was just sitting there having chai with some of his disciples, casually. Not wearing robes, not anything like that. And he said, and a couple of people just came up to him independently and said, I just really love your presence. You seem so at ease. Thank you. Yeah. He wasn't doing anything. Every one of you has had this experience. Yourself as being that one, bringing that. I'm sure there's so much more to say about compassion and much that I don't yet know myself. Is there something you'd like to say now, Ma?
Thank you. You answered the question. I appreciate.
Well, hopefully incited a deeper question in you.
Yes.
Also, I don't have a clock, so maybe somebody could volunteer to let me know when there's 10 or 15 minutes left. No. What else would we like to explore? Who has something? Okay, let me see if I can read this. Yes, how to remain or attains sattvic, in a rajasic, tamasic environment. I don't know, how do I get back? Ah, very good. How do I get back? That's the question. Okay. This world is so challenging. And it seems so broken. There's so much suffering. So much trauma and resentment. Each one here has been so neglected, rejected, abused, and have dished it out too, haven't we? Yeah. The yogis say that this epoch is called Kali Yuga, the most adharmic, meaning not sattvic age there is. But this doesn't suffice to give it a name, because it tears at us. We tear at each other. All of our wounds are seeking expression. All of our emotions seek expression, don't they? And we see it so clearly in others. Everybody's had this experience. Maybe you're in kirtan or satsang or just hanging out with some friends and everything is nice. And another friend comes in a foul mood. The whole energy changes, doesn't it? The whole energy changes. And we've ourselves been that one, right? Got in a fight or something, and we bring it with us, had a bad day, you know? How is it that we are when we ourselves get up on the wrong side of the bed, as we say? This seems to be the way of it. Which is, the world lacks emotional maturity. We lack emotional maturity. Everybody's stepping on each other's toes. And let's not forget, there's also so much beauty in that. And also, and this is important, because this much we know what I've said. The world is difficult. Life is difficult. People are difficult. This we know. So no need to really further explore it, okay? Let's lean into something that's a little less considerate, which is that when I found that I was acting from my emotion, I was acting out my resentments, my traumas, My sense that if I don't get mine, I will again be neglected, rejected, overlooked. If I don't dominate, I myself will be abused. These are the strategies of personality, you see. So all of this that I was doing is from my conditioning. My very personality, my strategies for operating in the world, chasing the things I want and running from the things I don't want, moved always and constantly without being aware of it by my attractions and aversions. This is the cause of my suffering, I myself. And I didn't know. It seemed this is the right thing to do to obtain happiness. And this is when the conscious mind is engaged in our reactive behavior. The prefrontal cortex is completely bypassed into instant reaction, automated, moved by my conditioning. But I didn't know. And when you offend me, it's because you don't know. We're both innocent. Think of it this way. You're walking along the street in New York, and somebody bumps up against you, and you turn around to yell at them, and you realize it's a blind man with a walking stick. Still angry? He's innocent. He's handicapped, can't see. This is called avidya. This blindness, this avidya, is the cause of suffering. My suffering, I bump up against you. Your suffering, you bump up against me. Every one of us is doing our absolute best. Do you know what the clarion call of this sufferer is? You must come to know it. It's I'm right. Bound in suffering. Bound in opinion and belief that agitate, frustrate, enrage me. Perhaps opinions and beliefs are not so much problematic, but the emotions that are tied to them in me, myself, my sense of arrogance, self-righteousness that isn't at all righteous, that condemns this and that, condemns my own self for my own mistakes done in ignorance. It is already forgiven because there is nothing here but innocence. If you walk a mile in another's shoes, you will come to know them. If you walk a lifetime in somebody else's shoes, you will say what they say, you would do what they do, you would think what they think. This is the nature of conditioning. This is what is suffering. This is what is Kali Yuga. And it is right to hold it in a certain loose disdain. But contempt, only you will suffer. Only you will suffer your contempt for the world. Gospel of Thomas, it says, blaspheme the Father, blaspheme the Son, but do not blaspheme the Holy Spirit. This conditioning is our modern word for karma, of samskara, of vasana. There is a perfection in it. One that we can't possibly comprehend because our minds are so limited. Our minds are still focused externally, not seeing the reflective quality of what is the world. There is only one escape, and this is total acceptance. It is total non-judgment. It is radical forgiveness. This is very good news. Not easy, but very good. If it was up to you to change the world, how long would it take you? If you had to, through your Facebook posts, change the whole world, or through your activities, through your generosities, or through your maybe you've had the experience of helping or changing one person. Did you notice they change right back? It would take you forever to change the world. But to change ourselves, to shift our own perspective, to come to a place of total radical acceptance, total non-judgment, only several lifetimes. Before you remove the splinter from your neighbor's eye, or remove the plank from thine own eye. This is the really hard truth, is we do not perceive the world as it is. We perceive it as we are. This is very good news. Now there's something we can do about it. Now, for me, I'm not speaking from the standpoint of theology. This is the divine human experience. To cultivate an equal vision. The world itself will seem to change. I can't explain this, but it just does. It becomes brighter, clearer, lighter, so much more joyful. And yet, still aware of the struggles. And it isn't calloused. It isn't in denial. It isn't burying one's head in the ground. It looks different. It feels different. I don't know how to say it. But this is it. I've told this recently. I'll tell it again. I only heard it myself. An enormous, successful warrior is lumbering down the street, and he comes across a teeny tiny monk. And he stops the monk and demands, What's the difference between heaven and hell? And the monk looks up at him. You disgusting, pathetic, mongrel warrior. I couldn't explain it to you in 1,000 lifetimes. And the warrior pulls out his sword and he's just about to slay the monk. And the monk said, "This is hell." And so the warrior collapses in tears at the monk's feet. And he says, "This is heaven." This doesn't relieve us of our duty, as Arjuna learns with Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. We engage in our dharma, our duty, for him to fight, inner, outer, but to do it without anger, without contempt. You've heard it said, resentment is like drinking poison and hoping the other will die. My contempt for the world is a poison to me. And there's something in it that's completely legitimate, isn't there? Can't we honestly say, even without any anger or violence in our hearts, the world is contemptible? But the contempt that has that animosity in it is a poison to us. Swami Satchidananda tells a story about, it's more of a parable really, but a man is driving down a country road and he sees a barn on fire and he wants to help put it out, but all he has in his pickup truck is a can of gas. All he has in his pickup is a can of gas. Shall he go use that to put the fire out? This is how I'm right helps the world. This is how ego engages in solving the problems of the world with its own little can of gas. This is very bad news for the ego. But very good news to the you that wants to be free. Because if you've come to see it, you've come to see the seed of all problems. Now you know where to spend your energy. And truthfully, the one who's free of this is such a profound contributor to the collective consciousness of peace and love. The one free of I'm right brings love. Around them, love will happen. Be that one. And in the other way, there are so many people we can get to agree with us on the horrors of the world. To what end? More I'm right. In a way, of course, we're right. It is contemptible. It's not wrong to hold it in disdain. To do that with a sense of I'm right, tied into emotion, it's only contributing more foment, more conflict, gas to the fire. Is it good news or bad news for you to hear? Lastly, coming to the point of seeing this, I wondered, how do I know if I'm actually a good guy? How do I know if what I'm doing and saying is righteous? Not in that way that's arrogant, but in the way that is righteous, that is good. Swami Shivananda says, be good, do good. How do I know? Because I always thought I was being good, do good. And I studied it long and hard. And as always, it was so simple. Nataraj, what are the contents of your heart? Are you troubled? Are you disturbed? Frustrated? Even a little impatient? Are you jealous or envious? Are you angry? In this, certainly, I cannot be right. Only that one can be right in the very same way that everybody else is right about their own perspective. Conflagration. Know this. If it isn't love, it isn't true. If it isn't loving, you are not right. If I am not loving, I am not right. Every one of us is completely innocent, been co-opted by our own minds, but not having noticed that it happened. I'm innocent. You're innocent. Forgiveness may be a practice, but it's also a wise recognition of what is already true before the mess even began. Forgiveness is the road to compassion. Compassion is the road to love. It's worth it. It's my promise. It is totally worth it. The problem with all of this is you die in the process. But this is it. To die while living. When I'm right falls away, wait till you see what you see with your two eyes. Wait till you see where you see from and what you behold when you relinquish I'm right. Oh, so worth it. Oh, Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Won't thou come? Won't thou come just this once? Come to me. Will my days fly away without seeing you, my Lord? Hmm. I want to say, I am the great beneficiary of loving you so very much. Each one knows it. Night and day, I search for thee night and day. Thank you. I knew I left one out. Thank you. Night and day, I search for you night and day. Feels like that, doesn't it? When we share a love that has no expectation, it isn't tethered like a bait. Doesn't make any promise and has no expectation. When we come to learn to love this way, wait to see how the love comes back. Thank you, thank you, thank you.